Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that is, honestly, kind of wild. We're going to trace a line from the absolute most profitable, highly systematized, and totally hidden corners of the YouTube machine, straight into a massive, unresolved legal gray area involving, well, our kids. It's a story about digital real estate, manufactured happiness, and the really profound, totally unexpected legal implications of a family living room suddenly turning into a global broadcast studio. You know, that shift from a cute home video to a high-stakes production, it happens way faster than you might think, and our legal frameworks are, frankly, struggling to keep up.
Okay, let's just jump right in with a staggering fact. Over 40% of the top 1,000 YouTube channels out there don't even show a human face. Think about that for a second. When we think of the creator economy, we usually picture these massive, super extroverted personalities, right? But the data actually reveals a completely different reality. A huge chunk of the platform's biggest success stories are entirely faceless operations. They're quietly generating millions of views and massive revenue without anyone ever stepping in front of a camera. It turns out some of the absolute biggest winners in the attention economy are completely invisible.
Now, you might be wondering, why is this faceless approach so incredibly popular? Well, simple. The creator economy is a massive industrial machine. And according to data from Outlier Kit, faceless niches like finance, business, and tech are pulling in just enormous CPMs. That's the amount advertisers are willing to pay per thousand views. With finance hitting up to $45 per thousand views, creators are effectively turning simple, highly optimized content into super lucrative digital real estate. Advertisers absolutely love this predictable, tightly targeted content, which means creators can build a highly profitable digital asset without ever having to build a traditional personal brand. And they definitely aren't just guessing here. Creators actually use a highly systematized 7-step formula to automate and literally manufacture these revenue-generating channels. From picking a high CPM niche to setting up an AI-driven production stack for voiceovers and editing, it's a fully optimized assembly line. Every single step, from analyzing outliers to consistent publishing, is completely calculated. It is a brilliant, low-friction business model designed purely for scale, retention, and maximum profit. They're treating digital content no differently than a widget rolling off a factory floor. And to make this content perfectly digestible, creators rely on a very specific, deeply researched auditory formula. Using royalty-free libraries like Motion Array, they intentionally layer in upbeat ukuleles, cheerful whistling, light glockenspiels. You know the exact sound I'm talking about. If you've ever watched a video and felt instantly, passively relaxed, well, you've experienced this deliberate psychological trigger. It's all about manufacturing a completely frictionless, cheerful vibe that keeps you watching, keeps the algorithm happy, and keeps that ad revenue flowing seamlessly in the background. But let's pause here for a second. We've established how optimized and lucrative this digital machinery is, right? But what happens when we take the exact same commercial incentives, that exact same pursuit of high-yield digital real estate, and apply it to a channel where the digital labor creating this wealth isn't a faceless AI or a stock footage library, but a real living child? When that optimized assembly line suddenly features a first grader, the dynamics fundamentally change. Let's pull back the curtain on the kidfluencer industry. Enter Ryan Kaji. His story starts innocently enough with these casual, spontaneous home videos of him just picking out toy trains at Target when he was 3. But by age 8 in 2020, his channel, Ryan's World, was generating an unbelievable $29.5 million in a single year. Seriously, let that sink in. What began as just spontaneous family fun exploded into a highly structured global enterprise. An 8-year-old was essentially the face and primary labor force of a multi-million-dollar media conglomerate, operating entirely outside the traditional entertainment system. And this brings us to the core tension of our explainer today. We're looking at a really fascinating master's thesis from Leiden University by researcher Kezia Albertine Nawita-Tobing, which peers behind the camera of these family-managed empires. It analyzes the intense legal realities operating behind the scenes. It's an incredible piece of research that forces us to look past the cheerful thumbnails and examine the fundamental human rights of the child at the center of the screen. It really makes us question what happens when the home literally becomes a digital factory. The thesis points out a massive inherent conflict of interest. The Kajis, and parents like them, must navigate dual roles that are fundamentally at odds with each other. On one hand, they're nurturing guardians whose primary concern should be the best interests and private family life of their child. But on the other hand, They are ruthless brand managers for a corporate entity, driven by profit margins, algorithmic demands, and relentless production schedules. Reconciling those two realities, it's practically impossible. This tension leads us directly into international law. Article 5 of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child dictates that parents must guide their kids according to their evolving capacities. Basically, this means that as a child grows and their understanding of the world deepens, the parent's direction has to adapt. They have to give the child more autonomy to exercise their own rights and have a legitimate say in their own lives. It's a dynamic legal principle recognizing that kids aren't just property, right? They're individuals with developing agency. But as the researcher points out, there's a glaring gap here. Middle childhood, ages 6 to 12, is essentially a legal forgotten zone. A kid like Ryan during his peak earning years is no longer a fully dependent toddler, but he's definitely not yet an autonomous teen. Because this specific age group is so conceptually overlooked in legal frameworks, their evolving capacities are especially vulnerable to being overridden by parental decisions. They're old enough to perform, sure, but legally invisible when it comes to having a voice in that performance. So the crucial point we have to figure out is determining when play actually becomes work. Under Article 31 of the UNCRC, kids have a fundamental right to true, unstructured, spontaneous play. It's absolutely essential for their development. But when a child is staging toy unboxings in front of ring lights, repeating lines for multiple takes, and following parental direction for a heavily monetized audience, is that still play? The thesis forcefully argues that this heavily curated digital labor actually encroaches on their fundamental right to simply be a kid. It turns their leisure into a commodity. And this directly brings us to Article 32, which highlights a very real danger of economic exploitation. Look, in the traditional entertainment industry, like Hollywood, there are strict labor laws. You've got mandatory Coogan Trust accounts, strict hourly limits to protect child actors from being overworked. But kidfluencing, it operates almost entirely outside these traditional welfare protections. These kids are generating millions of dollars from their own homes, yet they lack the most basic safeguards afforded to a kid working on a TV set. They are performing immense labor in a complete regulatory void. And it's not just a theoretical concern either. Ryan's channel faced real-world complaints from the Federal Trade Commission over opaque, undisclosed advertising practices. Think about it. When a child enthusiastically plays with a toy on camera, is it a genuine, authentic reaction? Or is it a carefully orchestrated paid endorsement? This proves that blending family life with commercial enterprise is an absolute regulatory minefield. It's a space where the lines between organic childhood experiences and corporate marketing are entirely blurred, leaving both consumers and the kids themselves totally in the dark. So when we break down who is actually responsible here, we see a total collapse in shared responsibility. The state is supposed to assist parents and protect children, but its oversight of the digital space is entirely fragmented and largely reactive. They usually only step in when things go terribly wrong. Because of that, the state largely defers to parental authority. But, as we've seen, those parents are now heavily incentivized by the very YouTube gold rush and those massive CPMs we discussed at the start of this explainer. It creates a perfect storm of vulnerability. The researcher summarizes this modern crisis perfectly. The private sphere transforms into a workplace, blurring boundaries between play and labor. It's such a powerful thought. Behind the cheerful ukulele music, the break glockenspiels, and those highly optimized thumbnails, the family living room has secretly become an unregulated high-stakes film set. The sanctuary of the home has literally been monetized, and the traditional safety nets designed to protect children from economic exploitation, they've just been completely bypassed by the sheer speed of the creator economy. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought for today's explainer. As the creator economy scales endlessly, and parent-led media empires continue to thrive in these legal gray areas, who is really looking out for the kids? Will our legal frameworks ever actually evolve to protect their right to a normal childhood? Or will the hidden cost of our brightly colored, perfectly optimized, free entertainment continue to be the fundamental rights of the child? Thanks for joining us for this explainer. Make sure you keep questioning the content you consume.